Testing, testing. That sounds all right. Thank you. Beginner's error, sorry. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming along to the planning meeting today, 22nd of November 2022. It's just gone 10 o'clock. First of all, I'd like to take us through standard notes, just to start where we are. If the fire alarm rings, please do leave the room by the nearest door, and we will be assembling in the car park. Hopefully it won't be raining. Can I ask if you have a mobile phone with you, if you could switch it to silent, please, or turn it off. Would members please note that if you're not in the meeting to hear the entire debate on the item, then you cannot vote on the item. Can I also ask that if you do wish to speak, if you raise your hands and make sure you keep them raised until the microphone comes to you, just so that the gentleman can find you up. Please keep all your points short. Do not interrupt when someone else is speaking. And obviously do use the microphones. Okay. We will be having a recorded vote today by roll call, which my colleague Sarah Saway will be managing, as it were, from that point of view. So can I turn to the first item on the agenda, please, the apologies?
We have apologies from Councillor Nuttall, Nutley, Hayes, Parker and Peart, and Councillor Connett is substitute for Councillor Nutley.
Thank you for that. And the next item on the agenda, the minutes of the last meeting. Are you happy for me to sign them as a true record?
Chair, could we have proposer, seconder go to the vote, please?
For
the minutes. For
the minutes,
yep.
Yeah, we do need a proposer and a seconder. But I'm asking if you're happy for that, if you could either propose and second, and we can go to the vote. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Dewhurst as second. Can I see a show of hands, please? And any against? Any abstentions? Thank you.
That's carried, Chair.
Thank you. Next item, declarations of interest. Any members have a declaration of interest for this item that we have before us? I don't.
Could it be noted that I'm not on this committee, please? I have been, before it's come to full council, for the positions to be readjusted, that I have been, if you like, removed from this committee, or whether it's justifiable in the Constitution or not, I'm not altogether sure, but that's the reason that I'm not on this committee anymore, and I think it should be noted.
Okay. Councillor Clarence, thank you. Obviously, you're staying at the committee as you're already here, so I appreciate you making that point. Thank you. I would like to declare the interest that I am a ward member for the item before us, but I am going to be speaking on the item. Thank you. And voting. Any other declarations of interest from my members? No? Okay. We don't have any public participation today, so I think really we need to take ourselves to the planning applications for consideration. However, I have just noticed on my notes, I would just like to clarify that Councillor Jeffrey, you are here today, and I'd just like to confirm for the record that you're not related to the Jeffrey family, who are the owners of the property that we are, or the land that we are looking at today.
I think I am very distant. Sorry, I think I am, but very distant. Yeah.
It was whether you should take that as an interest from that point of view, but I just thought I'd
But
mention that just to
I did
clarify.
think about that, Chairman, but it's so distant that
Okay.
for many years
I hope
ago.
you don't mind me raising
No,
that,
no,
but
no,
it's the
no,
best thing
fine.
to do.
That's
Thank you.
fine, yeah, thanks.
Okay, so can I hand over to our Planning Officer, Anna Holloway, please, to take us through this item, 21-02674, Major Secmation Farm in Dawlish, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for Area 3 of Housing Allocation DA2 at Dawlish. The application includes 201 houses, of which 29 would be affordable, including 21 affordable rent, which includes 2 disabled bungalows and 8 shared ownership, which equates to 14% affordable housing. However, the council would give a weighting for the disabled bungalows as set out in the update sheet. So the officer opinion is that it is actually close to the 15%, which is the amount set out in the viability report. There's also 33 retirement properties, which includes 11 bungalows. The proposal also includes open space, including allotments and community orchard, and also a combined leap and neep play space, informal play space, and green and blue infrastructure with the SUDs adjacent to Shutterton Brook. The scheme also would deliver the link road, through the DA2 allocation. You can see there the Area 4, this is the site currently being constructed by Persimmon on the Langdon Hospital site. That's from the Sainsbury's roundabout, and Persimmon will be building the road through to the bridge landing point. The County Council has planning consent separately for the bridge over Shutterton Brook, and also HIF funding for the delivery of the road through to the boundary with Area 2. That's the yellow line on the plan there. Area 2, there is outline consent for, and there are currently 2 reserve matters applications in for housing on Area 2. That is separate from the application today, which is purely for full planning permission for Area 3. You can see there the location plan. The site at the moment is accessed through the blue land, but following consent, this access would come from the north via that bridge and then link into Area 2 to the south. So the you can see there the north to south link road through the site, and also an access through to the east, which would link through to Area 5. And on the western edge, you can see the green infrastructure, which would run alongside Shutterton Brook, and that shows the allotments, play areas, and the SUDs and the other green infrastructure. I think that probably shows the green infrastructure a bit better. You can see the orchard there just above the play space. So the proposal includes a mix of housing. As I said before, we do have 11 retirement bungalows and 2 disabled bungalows within this scheme. We have some of the housing types there. And these are the site photos from taken at the site visit, which happened on Friday. So in that photo, you can see Langdon Hospital site in the distance there. And as we move around, you can see the Persimmon scheme, and then the Red Rose scheme, which is built out next to Sainsbury's. swing around in a moment. So here we have the area where the green infrastructure would be, with the trees there along Shutterton Brook. And we can see here some of the existing housing developments that have taken place within the earlier phases with the Cavanagh Home Scheme, and that has area 2 in the distance there, connecting into that already built housing scheme. So the officer recommendation remains as set out in the committee report for approval, subject to a number of obligations and conditions, but with the amendment to the affordable housing set out in the update sheet, and plus a condition for the details of the connection with Area 5 to be approved prior to commencement of the relevant phase. That is in combination with the obligation already in the recommendation regarding the connection to Area 5. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Anna. So I know we have ward members who would like to speak on this item. I don't know who would like to go first, but I'd like to call the ward members to speak at this point, please. If you would like to come up, whoever decides to come up first, if you'd like to come to the desk here with the microphone. Thank you, Councillor Petherick.
Thank you, Chair. This development was included in the local plan approximately 10 years ago. This site is defined as Area 3 of 5 areas. The total size of these areas are approximately 35 hectares of land, which is located northwest of Seckmayton Lane, and expected to deliver 860 homes with a target of 25% affordable homes. Today's application is for 201 new homes. I'm disappointed that the site will deliver a much reduced percentage of affordable homes. I understand that the developer has carried out a viability exercise justifying the reduced number of affordable homes, and our officers consider the outcome of the viability study to be acceptable. Would the officers please explain why the application is not viable to deliver 25% affordable homes? Construction of 250 homes on an adjacent site is already underway, and another adjacent site will be expected to accommodate 400 new homes. The current plan requires the developers to provide for vehicle access through the developments between the A379 Exeter Road and Elm Grove Road, including supported bus service, cycle lanes and footpaths. The new road is described as a link road, which has been much acclaimed. Residents are enthusiastic about its delivery. The new road will access the 860 new homes, together with at least 1,000 homes that have already been occupied. I have concerns about the suitability and efficiency of the link road, which will be just 6 metres wide. I understand from County Council that the new road will not be marked with double yellow lines. A large number of dwellings defined within this application will have garages and driveways that will be accessed from the new link road. It is inevitable that some residents will choose to park on the highway near their homes, which will complicate and impede the flow of traffic along this new road. As a result, large vehicles, buses and lorries will have to weave in and out of a large number of cars parked on both sides of the highway. This could seriously impact on the safety of pedestrians and other road users. A solution can be easily achieved by yellow lining the total length of the new link road. I would urge the committee to consider this. As a member of the patient forum group at the local doctor's surgery, I know that the surgery is already very stretched, with new patients, and there is not sufficient doctors and other medical staff to service the needs of the patients already on their registers. The Barton surgery is running at more than full capacity, and adding more patients is only going to make the situation worse. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask officers, are you going to respond to these points, hopefully, all together at the end of all the speakers, or did you wish to speak as we go?
As would suit you, Chair.
I think it would probably be good while the questions are in our minds, if that would be,
We'll give
if
it a
that's
go
okay
as
with
we
you.
go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In terms of the viability, which I think was the first point raised, the viability report it was actually undertaken by an independent viability assessor, and reviewing the applicant's information they submitted for that. This is a resubmission of an application, and the original application actually came in with 5% affordable housing, which was refused by officers as being insufficient. So the viability report that's being carried out, the viability assessment, was done by an independent assessor as required by our policy. In terms of the link road through the site, this has been reviewed by the County Council as the Local Highways Authority, and they haven't raised any concerns in terms of the safety of what's proposed. The design of that road is for a maximum of, as you'd expect, of 30 miles per hour. That's what it's been designed to, and it's seen as a main road, but through a residential area. So it's not expected to be like a 40-mile-an-hour road where you'd have clear ways through there. In terms of the yellow lines, that would be a matter if required for the Local Highway Authority, but none are proposed at this stage. In terms of local doctor surgery, as with the other areas here, there is an obligation proposed for £400 per dwelling towards the local surgery. So that's proposed within the Section 106 for this site, but it was also required for Area 4 and Area 2, which they're looking to obviously commence on. They have outline consent for, and they're looking to commence on shortly. So that would be expected to deliver some additional funding for the local surgery. I don't think there's any other points, unless Ros wants to come back in on anything. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to the next ward member, Councillor Wrigley.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to endorse and agree with Councillor Petherick's comments and add to that dentists. Dentists are a massive problem. We already have many people in Dawlish who cannot find a dentist, which is common in a lot of places, but the contribution towards the Barton surgery will not actually help us in terms of dentists, so that is something we do need to consider, please. And as County Councillor for the area, I will take up the issue of yellow lines in that space and the design of that road, and champion the suggestion that Councillor Petherick has made, because I think that's a good one. Firstly, I'd like to thank the officers for the work they've done on this. This is a section of 5 large developments around Dawlish, none of which are particularly welcome in Dawlish. It is a huge increase to the size of the town without sufficient increase in the facilities, the infrastructure of the town, and it's not a piece of planning that I feel we will be proud of in the long run, as we see more and more problems on the main A379, especially through Star Cross. That whole area is not fit for purpose, as one of my former Conservative colleagues of this council has always said, and I will continue to say. So we have more problems with infrastructure coming from this. However, I feel a good job has been done with a site that has to come forward. You will have noticed from tramping around the field, it is a very wet and boggy field. It is notoriously water-sodden already. I'm very pleased that the bridge is coming forward through the county, and that the link road is being delivered up to the gatehouse site as a very early stage to ensure that the construction traffic goes through. However, I am still concerned, and I don't see sufficient details worked out in advance yet, on the drains and the drainage, both foul and runoff from the site. South West Water have talked of a strategic sewer to connect this area. I don't see mention of that in this document, and I would like to ask the officers to ensure that conversations with South West Water continue for the strategic sewer solution. You may have noticed there's been a large amount of works delivering a new storage tank at the bottom of this site, just off the Persimmon site, some £2 million putting in that storage tank 2 or 3 years ago, which was an attempt to stop sewage flooding from the Seckmayton Lane drain that was taking the sewage from the 1,000 houses that had already been built down one single 6-inch pipe. That resulted in people having sewage in their gardens for a period of 5 years until we managed to get the solutions in place. I do not want that to happen again, and we have seen developers and their representatives already looking at that drain to try to connect into it, possibly not from this area, but I want to make sure that the strategic sewer solution is implemented and is not left late in the day, please. I'm disappointed with the affordable housing numbers, similar to Councillor Petherick. I understand viability, and I welcome the bungalows, even though they hit viability. I welcome the bungalows on this site. I am very disappointed that these are quoted at affordable rent and not at social rent. Current policies, I think, imply they should be social rent, so I would like that, if that can be checked and looked into, please, to ensure that this, see if this could be social rent rather than affordable rent. The description in the link of the link road in the conditions, I think, might need some slight adjustment. For example, in 2D, I think it's 2D, it talks about the delivery of the bridge area land, and we know that Devon County are intending to build the link road all the way up to the Area 2 boundary. So I suspect this should say the land required for the link road all the way through to Area 2 should be delivered at the beginning rather than waiting for it. So it's just a matter of detail there, checking if that could be checked, please. I'm pleased the Area 5 link has been mentioned. I haven't seen the additional document. I didn't see what was in there for that. So I'd like some more description on that, because we know that Area 5 have been appealing the decision, have been appealing the need to put in a connection and want to come out onto Seckmayton Lane. That has been happily turned down in support of this council, which I was very pleased to see, so well done. That's a good call there. But that Area 5 link is vital to ensure that Seckmayton Lane, which is largely now pedestrian, housing access and cycles, and a main link for those 1,000 new houses for people to walk down to Sainsbury's, that should not have additional traffic from the 24, 35 houses, however many end up on Area 5. So that is vitally important that that is ensured, and I presume that is within the 50 house limit. So I'd like it confirmed that that Area 5 link road link, which will not be built by Devon, so they say, will be within the 50 house occupation limit, please. Allotments. The allotments are very welcomed, especially if the land is so wet. It should be good growing land, which would be fantastic. I am slightly concerned there is no mention in here of the management of those allotments. I would like it to be stipulated, please, that at the very least a conversation is had with the town council, so that it is clear that those allotments are for the town of Dawlish and not just for people on this particular site. I would not like to see the allotments managed by the management company of this site and see them unused due to more allotments than you have people within the area. So I would like some stipulation on the management of the allotments and also the community orchard, please, because community orchards are particularly difficult if they are left. Once the developer puts them in, they're then left, they're abandoned, and then somebody scrubs them out because they don't know what they're about and what they're for. So the ongoing management of both of those, I think we need to put more in the conditions, please. The timings of some of the conditions are not clear. Some of them are talking about pre-commencement. Some of them don't mention what's happening there. And my other big bugbear on these developments that turn fields into building sites are the ongoing treatment of the hedges. I know you have details of boundary treatments. However, on previous developments, we've had sites that asked for the hedgerows to be protected during development. But then what's happened is that the developer has sold the individual bits of hedge with the houses without any conditions on what they can do with them. The house owner then, quite naturally, chops it down and puts a fence in place. I would not like to see that happen through this site, so can we ensure that the hedgerows are protected, please, post-development as well as during development, and conveyancing does not sell them to the individual house owners. And similarly, the management of this site in the future needs to ensure that those hedgerows are maintained in perpetuity, please. Just one final thing on the link road. This road will, of course, connect up to our famous Carhay Way. Let's not make that mistake again, please. So whilst the lining of the link road, I think, will now align on the plans, it may not have always done so, and I see there is a condition about levels on the site. Can we pay particular and very close attention, please, to the fact that the roads must line up both horizontally and vertically? And finally, post boxes. I know it's not within the planning authority's remit to determine where post boxes are. There is a universal obligation for new housing to provide post boxes if you are less than a mile away, or more than a mile away from a post box. The closest post box I can think to this site is St Mary's Cottages, which is not walkable to from this site. So whilst it is not within the remit, I would like guidance from this authority to actually suggest that the developer considers putting at least one post box. The 1,000 homes that Councillor Petherick mentioned, there is not one single post box on that entire estate. So it would be extremely helpful to have one put into this estate, please. And I think that's my list. So whilst I'm asking for the conditions to be tightened up, I think this is something that we probably need to go through, but make sure it happens in a nicely controlled and more acceptable way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't think both my fellow ward members have left me with very much to say on this. I think I've been ticking off items on my list that I was going to raise. So I will reserve a few comments for the site inspection team and ask for other members of the site inspection team who are present if they had anything they wanted to say. Do they need to come up to? No? No, that's fine. Okay.
I'm happy to speak now, but I thought we had to use a microphone.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes. I mean, as we all know, this development has been embraced in our local plan for over 10 years. And during the site visit, it was obvious to me that it ticks all the boxes, with the exception of the affordable homes, only 15% rather than 25%. I do have a few concerns, however, but I would prefer to wait until later in the meeting and I can address those with the members if I may, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bradford, did you wish to speak on this? Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. I did go on the site visit and I'm also aware that a lot of work has gone into this report for the application. And yes, I understand it's in the local plan. However, the site's only a relatively short distance from the ex-estuary, Special Protection Area and Ramsar site. I'm sure most people know what a Ramsar site is, but I'll repeat it. A dedicated Ramsar site is a wetland of international importance, originally focused on birds, but extended and recognised that a wetlands is an ecosystem and extremely important for biodiversity, conservation in general, and for the well-being of human communities. I don't like the word mitigation. Mitigation just makes something severe a little less severe. And all I can see in this plan are contributions for this and contributions for that. Greater horseshoe bats and sow buntings are being poorly served in this plan. As it stands, there will be a net detrimental effect. The mitigation proposals which are being put forward are subject to a high degree of uncertainty as to their efficacy. Bats do not like light, and one of the ways to get rid of bats is plenty of light. It cannot be assumed that mitigation will be effective. Planting trees doesn't make it okay to fell mature ones. It takes a lot of years for trees to grow, and the planting of new trees and hedgerows will not provide the same ecosystem benefits as established trees. It was extremely wet underfoot on the site visit, and I have noted that the Environment Agency did object to the proposal and did not think it would be safe from flooding over its lifetime, and could also increase the flood risk elsewhere. I believe this plan is flawed, and we should take notice of the ward members and the town council. I think we're being very short-sighted developing all of our agricultural land. A lot of things have changed dramatically since this local plan was put in place 10 years ago, and I think we as a council should be able to change too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've realised I haven't given officers a chance to come back on ward members' notes. I do apologise. If you would be kind enough to pick up that baton now, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So if I just go back on a few of those points raised. In terms of the dentists, we hadn't received a request for that. The obligations were set out in the adopted SPD development framework for this site, which include obviously the contribution to Barton surgery, and I don't believe there was ever a request for a contribution towards the dentist there. So we wouldn't have a reason to impose an obligation on this without any sort of planning basis for that. In terms of we've had some comments made about the drainage and the Environment Agency's objection. After we received that objection, we had a meeting with the developer, the Environment Agency, Devon County Council and Teignbridge's own drainage engineer to discuss this site, to come up with a suitable drainage strategy. And following that, we received amended details for that, and both the Environment Agency and the county, as the lead local flood authority, withdrew their objections and have no objection, subject to a number of conditions which are proposed to be included, which are included within the officer recommendation. So there is no current Environment Agency objection to this site. In terms of foul drainage, South West Water were consulted on this and haven't raised an objection to it. They say they can make the connection. So from a planning application point of view, we wouldn't have a reason to refuse this application on that basis. In terms of the link road to area 5, the SPD, so it's an adopted document, sets that out, but that would happen at the 100th home, not the 50th, which is why that is the obligation as proposed. The management of the allotments and the orchards would also be covered by the planning obligation. So we would expect details of the ongoing management and maintenance responsibilities. If we can include a request within that it's it can be they could offer it to the town council, but we couldn't require that to take place. Obviously, if we can clarify that that's for local people. If there's a specific area that members would like to see that there's allotments being available for, whether or not it's Dawlish town area itself or a wider area, then we can look at including that within the Section 106. In terms of the wider kind of the ongoing management and maintenance of the open space, which would include any hedgerows which are in the within the green infrastructure areas, that would be dealt with via the planning obligations, the management of that area, but also through the proposed LEMP. So that's the Landscape and Ecological Management Plan. This is located close to the ex-estuary and the Ramsar site and Dawlish Warren SAC, and it's also within the landscape connectivity zone for the Great Horseshoe Bats, and there is one sill bunting habitat on the site. This has been reviewed in detail by the council's biodiversity officer, and an appropriate assessment has been undertaken, and a consultation on that has gone to Natural England, and subject to the requirements of that appropriate assessment, there is no objection from either the biodiversity officer or Natural England on the proposals for this. They considered the proposals will mitigate the impact, so there wouldn't be a likely significant effect on the European sites. So that's kind of covered a lot of points. I think I've probably picked up on everything.
One I can remember is post boxes. But
post boxes.
Sorry.
There isn't a planning basis for us to ask for a post box on this site. We can obviously ask the developer to look at providing one, but there's not a planning basis for doing so.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And I'm sorry about the not calling you on at the right time. I'm just going to make a couple of statements going back to the site inspection team. From my perspective, as I went on that visit, and then we'll draw that part of the meeting to the close, if that's okay. It's really difficult. You visit a landscape site, green and rolling hills on a sunny day, and you're looking at a site of a placement of 200 plus houses, roads, etc. So it's quite emotive. Maybe it would have been better if it was raining, I'm not sure. The site, as has been said, is allocated in the local plan. I do feel the officers have worked extremely hard to get the conditions that they have. I am a little disappointed in the fact that we're not policy compliant in the 25% affordable for the plot, but I am very heartened by the fact that we have bungalows, and 2 disabled bungalows, and bungalows that have got permitted development rights withdrawn, so they will stay as bungalows. There is a demand in the area for those, so that is something that does add the extra weight to the percentage. I think it was 15%. I will obviously carry on listening to the debate, and I've listened to the reports and consider my decision. As everyone else in the room is going to. So at this point, can I open it up for debate? I know Councillor Haynes, you indicated you wanted to speak. If you've been very patient. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't go on the site visit, but I am familiar with the site from previous visits there, so that's where I'm coming from. Much of what I was going to say, you've just outlined yourself. I mean, I'm coming from the fact that it is in the local plan. There was that process, there was the examination in public, so it was all agreed. And what we're looking at here is just really the detail of what the scheme now is. I echo your point about disappointment with some aspects of it, but I fully accept the explanation that's been given by the officers to where we have fallen short in certain areas. I take it that the 3 houses in the northwest, which are in paragraph 356 and talking about amending the scheme, and I think that's in condition 11. So if that is giving sufficient protection to the fact that that will have to happen before the approval meets all of its conditions, then I can see no reason other than to go along with the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else wanting to speak? Councillor Dewhurst, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 2 questions and 2 comments, really. First comment is I'm really pleased to see the conditions about hedgehog highways, bat boxes, bird boxes. Ros is smiling there. And I think that's really good. However, at 5.4, I noticed that the EA is particularly concerned about water voles and the adverse impact on them. And these are a mammal which is on the UK red list of extremely endangered mammals. And it raises the issue of water voles, but I can't see anything else in the proposals and what we might be doing to mitigate the impact on these protected mammals. The next thing is about the bungalows. There's an awful lot mentioned in here about the bungalows, and that being sort of a positive thing towards the affordable housing element, and as a sort of consequence we should sort of look kindly on this very low number of affordable houses, percentage of affordable houses, because we're putting bungalows in there. But in my part of the world, bungalows are actually a premium in terms of selling. People are desperate to live in bungalows, and so I'm not quite sure why, when it came to the viability, we're sort of putting bungalows down as a negative against the housing numbers. Thank you.
Can I ask officers if they could come back on that? Sorry if you want a bit of time, but...
I'll come back on the water voles.
Thank you.
We had comments from the Environment Agency on this application and on the bridge application, which was submitted by county, which has been approved. And as part of the bridge application, there was a requirement for a water vole strategy, and that included looking at the habitat requirements there and habitat creation, etc. So, and that has now been submitted and reviewed by the Council's Biodiversity Officer and considered acceptable. So it's been dealt with under the bridge application rather than this one, but my apologies for not covering that off in the report. With the bungalows, it is specifically the affordable housing disabled bungalows, which are the critical point there. When we have affordable housing delivered, we don't often get disabled provision provided to this degree. And for that reason, it is given additional weighting when we look at it. I don't know if Ros wants to add anything on that point.
I just wanted to reinforce that in the officer's view, the affordable housing provision that we've got at the moment is policy compliant. There's an element in our policy that says where the target can't be met, for the target in the local plan can't be met in relation to affordable housing, where if that is supported by independently verified expert advice and analysis, then the provision, whatever level that might be at, is still considered policy compliant. So in our view, we are numerically at 14 and a bit %. The extra weight of the 2 affordable rent M43 accessible bungalows is sufficient to tip us up towards the 15% affordable housing provision, which is the level that our independent viability expert suggested could be supported at the site. I accept that sometimes bungalows are a premium product, and I think the open market ones probably will sell really well here, but inevitably they take a bit more land, which means that they are more expensive to build as well. So, you know, it's not just that the sales value is higher, everything that happens in relation to that bungalow costs more. I haven't gone through the viability work with a fine-tooth comb to see what the impact of having bungalows in the site is and the detail of that analysis, but I'm content with the conclusion that the provision that we've got here of 15%, broadly speaking, affordable housing is policy compliant in these circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Ros. Anything you wanted to come back on that at all? Councillor Dewhurst? No? Thank you. Councillor Hook next, then Councillor McGregor, Councillor Petherick.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I obviously share the disappointment of others about the percentage of affordable housing. I wanted to ask a few questions on the retirement properties, the open market retirement properties that are listed as a sort of condition, at condition 2, but it just says retirement properties, and I do understand that these are just a summary of the conditions and not the full wording. But I can't see, I think I saw one line that said the provision on site of 33 market sale age-restricted units, 11 of which are bungalows. Are they age-restricted in perpetuity? So will they always be retirement properties? Or is there a possibility that bungalows will get converted to dormer bungalows over time and therefore, you know, in all likelihood, be available for just about anybody? Can I just have that information, please? In terms of the viability explanation, I think it was Councillor Petherick, what he was after was an explanation of what are the exceptional costs on this site that mean that only 15 or 14 or 15% affordable housing can be provided. You know, is it the link road? What is it that is the exceptional cost on this site? And just as a matter of interest, what is the affordable housing percentage that was approved on Area 2 and Area 4, just so that we can see how it compares? In terms of biodiversity, I see that there was an objection from Devon Wildlife Trust. I don't see it dealt with in any officer comment beyond the DWT objections. And so can we have it confirmed that there is a 10% biodiversity gain for this site and that was properly measured? Because that is their objection. They're saying the report produced for the site does not include an assessment of net gain of biodiversity. So can we have some information on that? In terms of Searle Bunting, is there a proposed scheme elsewhere? So I understand that mitigation money is being given, but is there a scheme proposed to spend this money? Or is it just in a pot to decide what happens to it later in the day? In terms of pre-commencement conditions, I see there are quite a few in relation to biodiversity, and I understand that a pre-commencement condition must be agreed with the applicant. And can I have assurance that the applicant has agreed to all those pre-commencement conditions? In terms of allotments, those of us that the new developments in Newton Abbot that had allotments, I'm not even sure they've still come forward, 10 years further down the line. They were just left as areas with no topsoil on whatsoever, and one of the areas didn't even have vehicle access. So in the planning condition, can we ensure that the allotments are left in a condition in which you could grow produce and that they are accessible by vehicles and they are actually left that way by the developer? And then can I also understand what the requirement was for a mugger? I see there's a bit of a conversation around it, but I don't understand. There was obviously a requirement for it, which was then rescinded for some reason. Can I just understand that? And I agree that we should be looking for social rent. I mean, I'm hoping some of what we're saying now across the room can be incorporated in conditions. And I presume that reserve matters applications will have to come in, and that those, as a sort of safeguard, those could also be called back to committee if there's anything further down the line that, you know, local members are not happy with. And I think we have diligent local members in that ward that would come back. So presumably there is scope to come back if further down the line they're not happy with some of the reserve matters that come forward. But if we can have some clarification on the matters I raised. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hook. Do you want some time, officers, to look at those points? Okay, if you want to make your reply.
So the retirement properties, the obligation in there would be that they are age restricted, that is usually over 55s, and that we'd expect that to be in perpetuity. There's also a proposed condition to remove permitted development rights for upward extensions to ensure that they remain as bungalows. So that would mean that if somebody did want to build upwards, they would need to submit a planning application, which would be considered on its own merits at that time. In terms of the abnormals on the site, there was some down there for the demolition site clearance, underbuild, foundations, so to do with drainage and works on there. They are set out in the viability report assessment. In terms of the affordable on the other sites,
It's area 2.
so area 2 has 17.5%, and area 4 had it was reduced. There was viability work on that one as well. With areas 3 and 4, their viability was considered as part of the securing of the HIF funding. So obviously that kind of acknowledges that there is difficulty delivering here. Area 4's was further reduced because they had a vacant building credit. I want to say 14% before that, but I'd need to double check.
The provision at area 4 was similar, so all three have ended up with a relatively, same ballpark, less than 20% delivered on site for the affordable housing. What the precise numbers are, I've managed to pull up one, but I haven't pulled up the other. I think I want to say it was 19 reduced down to 12 for area 4, but it's of that order across the whole of the site. So obviously substantial difficulties with building, including as a consequence of the ground conditions that we've been talking about.
In terms of the allotments, there is parking and access shown within the drawings. As I said previously, the management of that, and we'd expect a specification to be required as part of the planning obligations to make sure that it is delivered and delivered in an appropriate way. The mugger was a requirement in the SPD, and it is not being proposed on the site. It's something that has been discussed with the applicant, but their position is that there isn't sufficient space to deliver it. Planning is always a balance of the different matters, and yes, this wouldn't deliver a mugger. However, overall officers are recommending approval as they think that the benefits of the scheme outweigh the lack of the mugger with this one. This is a full application, so there wouldn't be any reserve matters submissions coming forward. The other sites here have been developed under the outline reserve matters, and the reserve matters for area 2 are likely to come to committee at some point in the next couple of months. But for this one, it is a full application for the development. I'm not sure if
there's a couple more that I wrote down. I wrote down cell buntings.
Yep.
So members may recall full council agreed to support the RSPB with funding for a new reserve at Ash Hill. That proposal, I think, was forward funded, including through some borrowing. I can't remember who borrowed what, but I would expect that contribution from here would go to support the Ash Hill Reserve, which is between Bishop Stainton and Teignmouth. So there is an identified forward funded project that cell bunting contributions can go towards. Members have also talked about social rent versus affordable rent. The viability assessment has been undertaken on the basis of affordable rent, and that is the provision that's currently included in the 106 and in the viability. If we were to request social rent, then that would have a further impact on the number of units that we would be able to provide. The last one that I think was raised was around the 10% biodiversity net gain, which is detailed in the National Planning Policy Framework as an aspiration. It's not yet part of the it's embedded in the Environment Act, which will come into force next November, but it's not embedded in our local plan, and it is not reasonable for us to insist on 10% biodiversity net gain, as it hasn't been taken into account in terms of the viability alongside our other planning policy requirements. Anna, do you want to say something? There is something about offsetting and net gain at this site in general, isn't there? Do you want to pick that one up, please?
There is an obligation for, find it. So for a biodiversity offsetting mechanism, that is if they don't manage to have no net loss on site, that is as per area 2 and area 4, so that's similar obligations. And as Ros said, the biodiversity net gain 10% doesn't actually come in until next November, probably. That's the date that's been forecast. So obviously we're gearing up to that change, and as we move forward, we'll expect that to be delivered. But with this site, it is not considered to be a local plan requirement for the delivery here.
Okay. Anything you'd like to come back on that, Councillor Hook? I know there's other people who want to speak.
Thank you. So you're proposing to say no net loss of biodiversity. Have you measured what have they measured the biodiversity of the site before? The current biodiversity of the site, so that you can be assured of that?
So there will have been an ecological impact assessment undertaken as part of the environmental statement that was required for the development of this site. So that would give us a full baseline in terms both of habitat and flora and fauna that were present on the site. Whether or not that is in an offsetting matrix at the moment to establish the number of credits and units that there are on site, I don't know. But that would be what we would build into this mechanism and matrix. If they're not able to deliver no net loss, then we would expect that to be compensated for via other mechanisms. But given the size of the site and the amount of green infrastructure that we've got around its fringes, I would hope that we would be able to achieve no net loss on site, and therefore the mechanism itself wouldn't come in. But Anna, do you want to?
The baseline is included in the ecological impact assessment, which is part of the environmental statement submitted with this application. So the baseline will be set out in there. I'm not sure that we have had a calculation on the matrix, but then that's not something that was required when this application was submitted.
Just putting the microphone on. I think that's where we're at with that. Okay. Councillor McGregor, you raise your hand, please. Oh, have you already got a microphone?
I do. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Hook meant an audit of the biodiversity on site, which is something we've been pushing for quite some time, is a better understanding what is actually on site. Environmental impact assessments are much too broad ranging to actually give us an idea of what the biodiversity is on site currently. Coming specifically to the Mugger, I mean, that's a really good point, I think, to kind of point out that this is going to be a very, very large development when it's completed. 1,200 houses or 800 houses, I think. And not having a Mugger either allocated to this site or reallocated to another site, then removes cultural capital from residents within the development overall. And I think it is a sad indictment that we're not really pushing for a mugger there. The Highways Authority on 5.37 note that there is no safe and suitable access across the site from the public highway, and they are contrary to paragraph 110 of the NPPF 2021. And while the Highway Authority has no in-principle objection to the access identified through this process, further details are required as to this access strategy before a recommendation can be made as to whether this is suitable or not. So I don't think that they have agreed that it's acceptable. And I don't know whether they're objecting or agreeing. While an in-principle objection, no in-principle objection stands, a final decision hasn't been made on that. So that is a little bit of a concern. On 5.52, Natural England specifically say permission should not be granted until such time as the implementation of these measures has been secured. Can I have a guarantee from the planning officers that the points raised in 5.52 have actually been met prior to today's decision-making process?
Just for clarity on that one, to come in straight away for the complete avoidance of doubt, what that means is that we secure the money through the Section 106 agreement. So we won't grant planning permission until the Section 106 agreement has been signed. The Section 106 agreement includes the funding for the South East Devon mitigation strategy works. There are also the other elements of the mitigation strategy that are funded through SIL. So that's an ongoing rolling programme. But first priority is given in spending our SIL to ensuring that we are not held up from granting planning permission as a consequence of any Natural England requirements. So that is simply saying this needs to go in a 106 agreement to make sure that you get the money so that we can make sure that mitigation is delivered. So yeah, absolutely, that's in there.
And is Devon Wildlife Trust objection still outstanding as not met?
Devon Wildlife Trust aren't a statutory consultee, so whilst we take into account what they say in our consideration, we give greater weight to our internal biodiversity consultation responses and also to the comments that come through from bodies such as Natural England and the Environment Agency. So we may not have gone back out to Devon Wildlife Trust to see whether or not what we have now would meet all of their requirements. So if they haven't responded, it doesn't mean that we haven't addressed their comments, it just means we may not have asked them the question again. But if they're seeking 10% net gain and that's not being delivered here as we've set out because it's not part of our policy approach, then yes, their objection will still be in place.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. I've got Councillor Petherick and then Councillor Dewhurst.
I'll take a few over there for me because I've got some paperwork to refer to which I dropped once and got to sort it out again now.
Absolutely fine.
Thank you. Just try to go through this in a logical sequence. I had some points that required clarification earlier, and I have spoken to the officers and asked about, my first point was about the Barton surgery. For every new dwelling that was constructed on this development, the Barton surgery would receive £400, which is equivalent to £80,000. But I understand that if they require additional funding, then they can apply to us for SIL money if they want to build an extension or something along those lines. So that, I feel, has been resolved. I also asked about this is in the recommendations, this is item 13, there's the library and the Red Rock Centre. The Red Rock Centre is a building on the outskirts of the town that's primarily a youth club, but it's also used for educational needs for children that perhaps have had difficulty in sort of fitting into other education facilities. And there's quite a staggering amount, actually, £727 per dwelling, which is going to be £146,000 from this development, and similar amounts from the other developments as well. But the officers have advised that this is, I'm going to ask them to perhaps repeat that again, please, because I'm sorry that went over the top of my head. But that was a concern that I had as well. Also, the NHS Trust initially asked for £191,000, but they were told, no, you're not going to do that because you knew this was coming. You knew 10 years ago we were going to build all these houses, so now's not the time to ask for £191,000. But if indeed they could identify a justifiable need, then they could come to Teignbridge for SIL money as well. Because the NHS Trust, they've submitted a 33-page document. I only printed off 3 pages of it, but in the last couple of paragraphs, they mention, without the requested contribution, we will still provide health care to all the new residents of the development. Its ability to support health and well-being for everyone, providing health quality services are sustainable. NHS will be compromised. So what they're saying is, if they don't get the money, then the services are going to be compromised, but they need to come to us, Teignbridge, if they require more money. A couple of our councillors have already mentioned about the Elm Grove Road and the new stretch of highway. I've just got some notes here, if I remember correctly. I attended a county council briefing on the new link road. I mean, it sounds as though it's going to make a wonderful difference to the flow of traffic through Dawlish, and potentially it could do. But I attended the briefing, and the first thing I asked was about the yellow lines. I know it's been mentioned twice earlier. I was told, no, we're not going to yellow line it. But now that when you see the details of the plan, I think there is a greater need to do that. Now, the road is 6 metres wide. That's not very wide at all. Dawlish has a stretch of highway which could be loosely described as a link road, and that's known as John Nash Drive. I appreciate that most of the members won't know where John Nash Drive is, but that's about 9 metres wide, and that was built to serve a new development, which is in excess of 200 houses. Out of those 200 houses, only about 3 actually front onto that road. Most of them sort of park around the back and so on. And yet, dozens and dozens of residents will park along that road. Not a major problem because it's 9 metres wide and there's still enough room for 2 vehicles to pass. But a 6 metre wide road, if residents park on it, it's going to create a lot of problems. Now, it's going to also be used as a bus route. Double-deckers, possibly. Well, a double-decker is 2.5 metres wide, but then if you include wing mirrors as well, which all vehicles have, that will increase it to about 2.75 metres wide. So they're going to take up most of the width of the carriageway in one direction. If a bus comes the other way, they're going to get awfully close to actually colliding. So the total width of these vehicles, as I say, is 2.8. So buses and lorries passing, lorries tend to have wing mirrors that extend even further than 150 millimetres. I've noticed that today. And there have been cases where pedestrians have been injured on pavements because they've been struck with these mirrors that overhang pavements. The pavements through this site, some will have grass verges in between the highway and the pavement, but not all of them will do. And I have real grave concerns about that. Now, I was one of the members that was present when this plan was first voted, and I voted it through. I have no real objections to this development, but I have grave concerns about the highway, and I feel possibly inclined to abstain from voting on this one. The Highways Department is saying, well, we know there's going to be problems, but what we can do is we can alter the flow of traffic. Now, once again, members won't be familiar with the word Elm Grove Road, but Elm Grove Road is quite a busy road at the moment. It links a number of developments to the town. But what County are suggesting now, to ease the flow of traffic on Elm Grove Road, is to restrict traffic wanting to turn right from the Exeter direction. So that means that the traffic has to go somewhere else. So it will be using possibly the whole stretch of this. So I mentioned this before, but we already have a nightmare on Elm Grove Road, and I think it's going to get even worse. Ultimately, County may well end up by signalising this junction. I mean, it should have been done some years ago, quite frankly. But they're going to wait and see what happens when they alter the traffic flow and not allow traffic to turn right into Elm Grove Road. So anybody coming from Exeter that wants to access probably one of the 2,000 dwellings is either going to have to follow the link road or go up, I'm sorry, the name of the road escapes me now, where the sports centre is, Sandy Lane. You're going to have to access Sandy Lane, which is a lane. It's Sandy Lane. It's not very wide. So you're going to get hundreds, if not thousands, of vehicles going up there. So I've real concerns about that. And there's one other question, if I may, please. In fact, I've got a question here. 5.46, the County Council will also require a contribution towards club car vehicles. £30,000 each times 2. So what are club car vehicles, please? We've spoken about education, and if there is a child that has special needs, and I can recall when I was a governor at Starcross, that this can impact quite heavily on a school's budget if a child wants to become a pupil there, because they have to make certain adaptations to the premises. And I recall at Starcross it was necessary to install a special toilet and changing room, which cost a lot of money. But I see that there is an allowance will be, there's a standard rate available for schools to claim if they have one of these patients, and it's £89,000, which seems to me to be quite reasonable. But then I also then query, well, what happens about this? Well, it's not the development that pay for this, not directly. It's from SIL money. So if a school has a need for an SEN patient, and this development will create possibly 1.6, then the applicants, sorry, the schools can actually apply to Teignbridge for SIL money. I think that's everything. I've just got to say one question on what are club vehicles, please. Thank you.
She's already reaching for the mic, I think, Anna, so thank you.
So club cars are things like co-car, where you have shared access to vehicles rather than individual ownership. There is a proposal for a travel plan for this development that would include any requirement like that, but there's not a specific obligation for the delivery of a car club vehicles. In terms of the contributions, I think I said before that there is an adopted SPD for this site that looked at the infrastructure requirements, and as part of that it included library and Red Rock Centre contributions and the Barton Surgery contributions. So they're all included within that. Following the highways comments, we did have additional information submitted, and there have been further discussions with highways, which is reflected in paragraph 3.34, where they have no objection subject to the construction traffic coming from the north, which would be dealt with through the approval of a construction environmental management plan. In terms of the education contributions, then that is expected to come through SIL payments, and obviously this development will be SIL liable, and that will be a sizable amount of, it's going to be north of £2 million. With the link road through the site, the SPD required a carriageway 6 metres wide to allow for that bus access through there. And I think, as we've previously said, that the matter of yellow lines would be something that the local highways authority could look at a later date, but there's no evidence before us at this stage that it would be a requirement of this application. And we've had no comments from the highways authority that would indicate that that would be necessary. Okay, thank you for that. We'll move on with the next requested speaker. Councillor Dewhurst, you wanted to come back. You had to put your hand up.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of what we've been talking about with regards to environmental impact and monitoring and the like, I notice on condition 15 that we have a condition to survey trees and buildings for roosting bats and nesting birds prior to the works. Can I ask what happens to that? And is it just a sort of a list which then one can say, well, you know, we've lost them, or is this something that we actually do something about to ensure that we don't lose them, but at the end of it, we actually have at least the same number or more? Thank you.
Roosting bats, nesting birds, both protected by law. So if during that survey there were bats or birds found, then that would need to be dealt with through the appropriate licensing system with Natural England, and through there is requirements obviously for the detailed design of the bat and bird mitigation, and through the LEMP and the biodiversity, the other conditions that are there. But if there is the conditions there, so that, you know, when they come to actually demolish the building on site, that if there are nesting birds in there, that they just that they check to make sure there aren't any beforehand, and if there are, then, as I said, there are legal protections in place for those.
Okay, thank you. You wanted to quickly come back on that, Councillor Dewhurst?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. Of course, if they did the survey, you know, now, they wouldn't find any nesting birds. So is this time limited, or you know, when will the survey be done, please?
The key thing really is that if you're about to chop down a tree, you don't do it before you check that whether, or knock down a building, you don't do that before you've checked if there's anything nesting or roosting in it. So it's about that when you do the works, because if you then need to put in place additional mitigation that hasn't been captured by the other conditions, you can do that with the knowledge, or you might need to reprogram your site works to allow those birds to complete their nesting season before the tree is or structure is removed. So it's about identifying whether there is a need for any additional mitigation as a consequence of the specific habits of specific creatures, as opposed to the generic approach that we take to the generic site-wide planning. So it's dealing with those hyper-local issues that you only know about. There's no, like you say, there's no point in doing a survey now if the work's going to commence next summer. But equally, there's not much point in doing a survey next summer if the works aren't going to start for another 12 months. So we want to make sure we've got up-to-date information about the actual usage habits of actual bats and birds, as opposed to the generic, we know this site is used by bats and birds around its fringes. We can then make sure that better mitigation is put in place.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I have Councillor Hook who'd like to come in, and then Councillor McGregor and Councillor Bradford.
Thank you, Chair. Back to biodiversity. I don't think I'm incorrect to say that we have conditioned biodiversity net gain of 10% on other major applications. So I would like to add it in as a condition, and the use of the matrix. And this is actually quite a recent application, 2021. It's not as if it's been kicking around for years. And don't we have the Environment Act 2021? Hasn't that been through all stages of Parliament that now requires that 10% net gain? So, you know, irrespective, I think we've done it on other major applications, and I would like to add it in here. In terms of the road, I think it is a careful balancing act between designing a road that isn't going to encourage high traffic speeds. So the wider you build the road, the higher the traffic speeds are likely to be. And just because it's a link road doesn't mean to say that we want traffic to be travelling at speed through a residential area. So I think it is a careful balancing act. And I think it is potentially sensible to see how it operates, and then if there's need for double yellows in a particular location, then that's taken forward. But if the road isn't adopted, that would be impossible. So is it proposed that the road is adopted early on? Because thinking of roads in Hill Park, even the main link roads that will potentially ultimately be link roads, they're still not adopted, so you couldn't have double yellows on them. So is it proposed that it would be adopted very early on in the development? So that was 2 points there.
Thank you. Are you able to come back on
So
those?
in terms of the road, Devon County Council are proposing to construct that, and they'll obviously be doing that on the basis that they'll take it to an adoptable standard and with the intention for it to be adopted, and certainly obviously they would expect there to be in the highways agreements the requirement for it to be public accessible if you've been spending public money on the delivery of it. Planning cannot require the adoption of roads. It's previously gone through the courts, and I don't know if Ros wants to add anything on that, but it's been previously held that planning cannot require the adoption. It can only require the roads are delivered up to an appropriate standard. In terms of biodiversity net gain, probably in terms of other sites, I might leave that one down to Ros to answer. The 10% is due to become law in November next year. I think there may need to be additional legislation for that to come through. I'm not sure if that's gone through yet.
Thank you, Anna. So the way that our local plan is structured at the moment is that we seek no net loss of biodiversity on our allocated sites, and if we're approving development on unallocated sites, then we seek biodiversity net gain. So I can't think of an example where we have requested 10% net gain, but if we have, it may have been, as an example, on, I've completely forgotten the name of the site, Berry Knowles, which was an unallocated site where there were other material considerations that weighed in the balance in our decision-making process there. So if we were allowing something that's outside the local plan, then we expect to see material benefits, of which no net gain would be one. The plan as currently structured is for no net loss. We are moving towards a position of expecting net gain, but that isn't embedded in our local plan at the moment. It is becoming the weight to be given to the biodiversity net gain provisions compared to the weight to be given to our local plan is changing all the time as we move towards that November 23 date. At the moment, we don't have an established way to calculate it from Natural England. We are in consultation and in draft mode with them. The offsetting matrices have not been published in their final form yet, so everything that we do is still slightly smally experimental. You know, we understand the principle of the offsetting mechanisms that will be used to ascribe units to different types of habitat based on the amount and the quality of that habitat, and then consider how replacements would match up. But that is not yet something that's been published in its final form. So we are still on a journey towards that November 23 date. So at the moment, I don't think it would be reasonable for us to impose a condition requiring 10% net gain. And if we did that, I think we would be we would run the risk of there being additional impacts on viability of development here. I think the framework that we've got, the conditions that we've got around the environmental impact assessment and the no net loss provisions that are built in, the offsetting mechanism that is built into the decision framework that we've set out for you today, is the reasonable place that we can take it to. But obviously that's our advice.
Thank you for that. I have Councillor McGregor wanted to come back, and then Councillor Bradford.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming back briefly to the discussion on affordable housing, I seem to recall very early on in the current administration's meetings that we discussed a site in Dawlish that originally had been planned at 17%, reduced to 11%, and actually delivered 4% affordable housing. Can we just have an absolute commitment that we will not retreat to those kind of levels of numbers? In terms of Councillor John Petherick's point about the NHS, I think it's worth pointing out that
when the NHS are now coming asking for money, they're not just coming and asking for money because they think they can get money out of a site. Funding for the NHS has materially reduced compared to the cost of living increases and inflation over the last 10 to 12 years, simply because of economic climates, etc., also government policy. But it is important that we recognise that the NHS are asking for a reason, and we do not want to see services compromised, particularly for new residents coming into an area and new developments. And I think it's important that perhaps we have one eye on speaking to developers to encourage them to make a contribution if they can. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. I don't think there's anything any points to make on that, but from that point of view, Councillor Bradford, you wanted to have a say.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I've just got a couple of questions regarding the Devon Wildlife Trust. I'm not clear on where we are with that. And the other question is, how does a badger protection plan work, please?
So in terms of the badger protection plan, like we have the waterfall strategy for the bridge application, we'd expect details of that, so the detailed scheme to be submitted and approved. That would be considered by our biodiversity officers at the appropriate stage, which would be prior to the commencement of the relevant phase of the development. So we wouldn't necessarily have something that was site-wide if it only impacts on a smaller area. So it's in terms of the Devon Wildlife Trust comments, I think Ros kind of covered this earlier, that in terms of the 10% biodiversity net gain, and also in terms of the fact that we have the biodiversity comments from our own officer and from Natural England as well, who are obviously the relevant statutory authority in terms of this site. Ros, would you like to add anything to that?
No? Okay. No. Ros, you already went through all that, I know, from that point of view. Okay, where are we then? I don't have any more speakers at the moment. I don't know if there are any other points that members want to stand on or confirm, but we are where we are. What are members minded to do? Councillor Dewhurst.
Chair, thank you. I propose as set out.
Chair, sorry, for clarity, I just wanted to come in because we did update our recommendation at the beginning of the meeting verbally. I can't remember what change we made, sorry Anna. So we've got the as set out in the update sheet, which makes it clear what the percentage of affordable housing is. And then we added in the extra condition about the link to Area 5, so making sure that we've got the link into Area 5. So we've got the main report and then the update report, which adjusts the affordable housing, and our recommendation is that we include the additional link road. So I just wanted to make sure that members were aware of that additional condition.
Thank you for that clarity. So that is not as an amendment, it's a yeah. So Councillor Dewhurst, are you content with your thank you. Okay, so you're content with taking that into consideration. Thank you. So as set out with the additional as specified. Thank you. Councillor Haynes.
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Any other points or I don't think we've kind of had a good debate from that point of view. I think we know where we are. So can I ask, I think it's Chris, you're going to be taking us through a roll call vote. So can I ask Chris to go to the vote, please, on this item?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bradford.
Against.
Councillor Connett.
For.
Councillor Cox. Councillor Dewhurst.
For.
Councillor Haynes.
For.
Councillor Jackie Hook.
For.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Abstain.
Councillor McGregor.
Abstain.
Councillor Goodman-Bradbury
4.
and Councillor John Petherick.
Abstain.
Chair, that's 5-4, 1 against and 4 abstentions, so that's carried.
Okay, so we will move on to the next item, major decision summary. I don't think we have any items on that. But we do have the appeal decisions reached. And Ros, if I could ask you to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think there's anything of particular note on these. It will come forward next month, the appeal in relation to Area 5, which we surprisingly didn't actually come up in our conversation today, was dismissed because of the access difficulties off Seckmayton Lane, largely, as well as other concerns relating to biodiversity. So that will be on next month's list. But I don't think that the applications that are, or the appeal decisions that are on the list today raise any particular issues of, of note. Although, having said that, I have just spotted 34 St Mary's Road in Teignbridge, which is the balcony decision where members overturned an officer recommendation to approve and the appeal was dismissed. So members' decision there was upheld in relation to the overlooking impacts of that larger balcony. So that one is worth noting.
Thank you. Well, that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you for your attention at this time, and I'll formally close the meeting at 11:31.